just going to say that everybody who wants to have a seat, there are many seats available. So why don't we just take a sec, now that we've done the intro, thanks, Pat, for you to come on in and sit down if you would like.
It's too dark.
Yeah. There's seats up here. There's really comfortable couches here.
Highly recommend the couches. They're pretty amazing.
Pretty cushy.
You want to sit down? I can probably hold it.
Oh,
Try. No one. Go ahead. Just an FYI. Chris? Oh. Call him. You're too dark because this is too bright. It's going to be very weird.
I think it's going to be okay.
Okay, perfect.
You know what? Awesome. I think we'll get started. Each municipal election, we see a fresh crop of civic leaders eager to bring new ideas to the table to improve their local school, community, or city. But for many first-timers, the odds are already stacked against them because of what's called the incumbency advantage. Over the past decade, incumbent councillors won 92% of the time in Canada's 3 largest municipal elections. For example, in 2014, only one Toronto candidate in 44 races was able to unseat an incumbent councillor. This is because incumbents get a head start. Name recognition and access to constituent lists make it easier to raise funds and contact voters. Despite this almost insurmountable challenge, thousands of aspiring new leaders continue to enter municipal races across Canada. But where do new teams find the resources to build strong campaigns?
It's very difficult for just the average person who is political, who's interested in making a change in our community, to even know where to begin.
Hi, I'm Chris Cowperthwaite, co-founder of the Open Democracy Project. We believe that every municipal candidate should have access to powerful campaign tools. That's why we're building Democracy Kit.
Having a tool that you can go to where you can pull out templates, pull out manuals, pull out strategies, and draw on some of those best practices, I think is really exciting.
After working with 17 campaigns in the last municipal election, I found that each campaign faced strikingly similar challenges. Everything from interpreting election laws to marketing and fundraising.
Democracy Kit feels like a seed for change.
It is connecting people with democracy and with politics in a way that's thinking smart about the future and what campaigns in the future will look like.
We're going to use technology to connect municipal candidates and allow open collaboration to share content. The end result will be an accessible online platform that will offer quality campaign resources such as startup fundraising plans tailored to team size and experience, a blueprint for building voter contact operations, and affordable and effective campaign digital tools, including websites and contact management systems.
Democracy Kit allows people to use technology to save them time, to amplify the resources that they have available to themselves, and to make sure that they're leveraging whatever resources they have, whether it's financial or time, to the maximum capacity to make sure that when it's election day, they have a better chance of winning.
Had I had a tool like Democracy Kit right from the onset, it would have saved me so much time. It would have saved me all those countless hours I spent both on researching and learning all of my roles and responsibilities that I needed to get me through the campaign.
All those tools in an open, wiki-type, accessible and transparent manner would benefit not just individual campaigns, but cross conversations from campaigns.
Campaign teams across Ontario are already signing on to contribute content, but we need your support to build Democracy Kit in time to make a difference in the 2018 municipal election. Our goal is to raise $25,000 in order to launch by spring 2017. Every contribution counts, and to show our appreciation, we're offering some great perks. We want to open access to the political system, and we hope you'll be a part of this important change. Please share our campaign to help spread the word. Thank you from all of us at the Open Democracy Project. Okay, thanks for sitting through all that. It's the first time we just launched yesterday, so I appreciate you. You know, it's trial run, right? And thank you all for coming out. Wow, this is great. Awesome turnout. Thanks to Tom Bear for hosting us. Super pumped about being here tonight. I've been to Civic TO multiple times, and as everybody said in the room, it's just an amazing group of people. people, and there's a lot of familiar faces, but some great new faces as well. And it's pretty cool that we've got such a good Ottawa contingent in the room. Some of the folks that I know, so that's very neat. Okay, so tonight I really want to focus on the tech platform for obvious reasons here. So there's all sorts of stuff we could talk about the content as well, and I'll give you a high level overview. So sort of what I'm going to go over is first of all, high level overview of the platform that the content development process, and then we're going to get into the plan for the tech working group, which actually we're starting tonight as a working group here at Civic Tech TO, and we'll be meeting on a weekly basis. So in some ways, if you're interested in diving into the details, there's lots of people here, so there's maybe not as much time for all the questions you're going to have, but good thing is we're going to have a working group right after, and then every week after this. Okay, so I'm going to dive right in. First thing, I always forget at the end, so I'm going to do it at the beginning. Could you please, if you have a device, follow Democracy Kit? So it's at Democracy Kit. And if you could follow that, that would be great. Like on Facebook as well. Something to do if you're tuning out at any point during my talk. If you could actually do that, that would be great. We are tweeting hashtag Democracy Kit. Okay. So I'll loop back on the Indiegogo page. But yeah, we just launched our Indiegogo campaign yesterday. This week is a soft launch, so we actually haven't sent out a press release or anything. That's going out on Monday. Obviously tonight, again, with the election that's going on, it's pretty awesome that you're all here as well, so, given that. So that's all happening. All right. So in terms of what, and in terms of an introduction, I think that the video probably did a good job of introducing who I am and what we're doing with the Open Democracy Project. And in the interest of time, I don't want to get much more into that, other than to say that my background really has been not-for-profit startups. So 10 Oaks Project, which I can't for you, the LGBT community in Toronto and Ottawa. It's based in Ottawa, but I was on the founding team of that back in the mid-2000s. Scholarship Foundation nationally, I was involved in sort of a turnaround operation of that. And politically involved for since the 90s on trustee campaigns through the provincial level, and then in the last municipal election, Ground Force Digital, a company that I founded in 2013, worked with 17 municipal candidates. So some of where we're at today with Open Democracy Project has been the learning of that process, the advances in technology in terms of contact management systems, team collaboration tools like Slack and whatnot. And so in many ways, we're evolving as the technology is evolving and as we're learning about how to structure the business in terms of serving the clients. But at the end of the day, whether it was my work with Ground Force Digital or the Open Democracy Project, really at the end of the day, we're looking at how can we build out a really solid platform for a group of 3 to 10 people to build an organization. And it just so happens that municipal campaigns are a really cool environment for doing that, and there's thousands of them. Okay, so we can come back to that, but it's part of what's driving me. So the Open Democracy Project, the way that structured it is there's the tech platform. So I'll get into the details of that and what we're thinking of using in terms of the tools to deliver Democracy Kit. And then importantly, most importantly, there's the mechanism of people in rooms or gatherings like this, campaign teams, how they're going to come together to actually feed into the resource. So the kit itself would have a few components, and this is, again, we're focused on delivering a municipal campaign resource package. Not focused on mayoral, we're focused on school board and councillor races specifically. Happy to answer more questions about why, but there's a bunch of thinking that's gone into that. And based on our experience, I mean, this is a resource built by campaigners for campaigners. The people we are designing this for are people that have decided that they're interested enough to be exploring whether they will either run or work in a senior role on a campaign. Okay, so this is for somebody who has probably as a community leader in some regard, they've been involved in maybe on a board, or they've been involved in their local community center, or they've led a community advocacy initiative or a building advocacy initiative. They've taken on some role, they're familiar with organizing a group, and they've decided, I'm really interested in municipal, I want to take a run for trustee, maybe I want to, represent my community, I'm interested in this councillor race, or I'm interested in making change, but I'm not the candidate. But I'm really good at fundraising. I think I can do that. But I just and I want to mount a challenge an existing incumbent, right? So that's just to be specific about where we're focused. That's the audience. So in terms of the resources and what we're going to be building out, a knowledge base. So basically articles, any files. We're using templates, budget templates, presentation like campaign plan decks, templates, documents like checklists for how to set up a campaign office. It could be really a wide range. Code. So we'd be looking at themes. If you're familiar with Nation Builder, it's one platform you can build templatable templates for WordPress, whatnot. Again, that's code repository. Project plans. So looking at for various operational or activities on a campaign, or even in the preparation stage, things like doing your opposition research. Let's say, right? There are in order to get from point A to point B, we asking campaigns to contribute their plans, the way they've done that, and then actually provide that in a templatable format. Shared drive. So the vision here is basically at each stage of the campaign, we want people to be able to just kind of copy the file structure for their own campaigns, right? So essentially, you get your organization's file sharing in a box, right, ready to go, and then you can just adapt it as you see fit. And then finally, experimenting with, there's lots of great online course programs from Open edX and Google Course Builder is one we're focused on, and there's some really neat things in terms of setting up tracks through content in order to, once we get all this content set up, having somebody start at a point and identify that they're interested in being a fundraising lead, and then serving up the content that they need to do that job. Okay, so that's the focus and the components of the kit. And again, in the working group, really, this is the job of that we're going to be focused on in the Civic Tech TO working group here, is building out this platform. And I've got some thoughts on the specific systems we're going to use, but that's still open for discussion. It's still evolving. It's not been any final decisions made yet on that. In terms of then how we're going to set up the content into the kit, we've looked at 3 phases. So the first phase is very exploratory. So you're looking at an individual who's got that idea in their head. Maybe somebody has suggested, Matt, I think you should run for school board trustee. And he said, that's an interesting idea. I'm going to do a little search. He arrives at the site. What does he need? So this is what we're talking about with campaign teams right now. Where we're arriving at is it's like a case study based types, providing a couple of various different examples, people from different backgrounds, rural, like urban settings, stories, just little clips. Here's what it was like. It could be as simple as somebody who's been a campaign manager before, doing a 3 or 4 minute YouTube video or whatnot and posting that. So that's the kind of resource. Also, and a self-assessment. And this is where we can get interesting more down the road as we actually have build out the tool, of actually having pretty robust self-assessment to see if you're ready to mount a challenge. And that can be not just for the candidate, but actually for some of the senior roles in a campaign. You need for a campaign, you need a candidate, money, and people. Right? So if you need to have somebody, or it's usually two or three people, and you're going to have those skill sets covered. And then you can recruit and move to the next step, which is preparing. So this is the kind of typical campaign, sitting around a kitchen table or community center table or whatever table, and it's likely then at that point 5 to 10 people. Again, really small groups still. This group is going to map out the plan for the campaign. So we've got the planning, so strategy, organization structure, all of that. Research on in order to prepare for your run, compliance. What do you need to do legally, financially on a campaign, and then resources. So technology, people, and money. Okay, and then finally, the campaign actually phase would be the various units of the campaign, from comms through to volunteer management, voter contact, get out the vote on E-Day, and advance polls, reporting, digital, media, all of those verticals for the campaign. So that's basically the way we're structuring the phases through the Democracy Kit. And then how we're planning to populate this is we've already started roundtables. So we've hosted several, London, Ontario, 2 in Toronto. We had a town hall with 50 people the other day at it who were brainstorming ideas for content. We're in Leslieville roundtable tomorrow. Scarborough, York South-Weston, I was up there yesterday. Kitchener-Waterloo, we're having conversations with. It's going to be out in Ottawa at the end of the month. So going to cities across, right now it's primarily Ontario. We're in touch with Mayor Nenchy's office in Calgary and Vote Kit out there. And so we're aiming to do as many of these roundtables as we can over the course of the month. And this hub idea, right now we're in Toronto and London. That's where we've got London, Ontario. That's where we've got a footprint. But of course, we're looking to expand. Again, Ottawa crowd, Civic Tech Ottawa, yay. And so, yeah, that's the municipal hub structure. This is why it's so cool to be at Civic Tech Toronto, where you guys are doing it, right? And so, I guess I need to use the over arrow. Okay, so monthly town halls. So the idea here is that we're going to be meeting on a regular basis, if not a weekly, every couple of weeks. The tech team will be meeting every week here at Civic Tech TO, at least until we get the platform launched. But this is on the content side. So this is really campaigners, people who have been on a campaign or who have had some municipal campaign experience, getting involved in producing content for the kit. And I'm going to skip through this pretty quickly. Basically, you can. I'm gonna fail at this one. Escape from that, and I'm going to basically just say we're going to move on to the next piece, which is essentially what the platform itself has. So all I was going to say on that is that we're going to, at the town halls, we'll just review the content that's being submitted. So right now at the roundtables, we're getting people to submit ideas in terms of what they want to see in each of those areas that I went over. So it's looking things like we need to have a budget template for municipal candidates, and that would be different than for school board candidates, different than councillor candidates. We need to have a checklist for how to set up your campaign office. Yesterday at the roundtable, somebody said, we're talking about translation of the resources and what resources need to be translated, and so we kind of narrowed in that the highest priority for translation would be the second stage, not necessarily explore, because that small group of people, the people at the roundtable are saying would probably be comfortable enough with English, and maybe the campaign resources are lower priority, but it's the prepare section where you've got basically building up plans and whatnot, where you'd want to translate that content, because that's where you've got a small group that's recruited maybe a few of their contacts that English may not be their forte. So that's the kind of insight that we're looking for through these roundtables to actually make this a really usable resource. for campaigns. And then finally, here, so this actually, and this is kind of going to bridge into the the Q&A here. And bear with me. This, as I said, is what we're going to be presenting and discussing in the working group. And I'm not expecting you to all talk through this. It's too small to read. But essentially, the technology we want to make sure that you basically have one Google login and you can access everything, right? So it's all based around the Google suite, and we definitely have considered things like MediaWiki and other options like OpenEdX, as I discussed before. But keeping everything in the Google suite for the audience that we're looking to serve makes a lot of sense. And so there's really two kind of entry points here. There's the user who's going to access, as I said, somebody who's interested in running or in volunteering on a campaign, and how are they going to access the resources, what's going to be their experience. And then there's the person who's contributing content. And they're very different people. So I'll talk through this because I actually would love to, in the Q&A, get your initial feedback from the group, and then we'll talk further in the working group. But essentially, the user comes, and the key thing is, to use the resource, it's going to be free and open. But we are going to need people to log in to use the resource, and it'll be using a Google account, automatically added to a Google group, and that will then give you access to basically all of the relevant resources that you need on the drive, right? So essentially, because we're also using Google Course Builder, that will allow you to work through the courses, and you don't necessarily know you've been given permission to the various files as the user, but when you're navigating through the courses, you're going to be able to click on links and whatnot and just have access because you're already part of that Google group. All right, so Google Course Builder here, we've got the stages. So if who's familiar with Google Course Builder? Has anybody used it before? It's got some really neat stuff. I'm super pumped about working on it in the working group, which is they've got this, they've released relatively recently a skills matrix. So you basically put in the skills, it maps all the skills out, and then you can layer on top of that your courses to see where you need to basically design your courses, right? So you put in what skills, you have things that are prerequisites for those skills and things that follow on from those skills. It builds a map of the skills, and you can overlay your courses on top of that to see where the holes are, essentially. And so what we'd like to do, there's some great examples that Google's built of courses, Digital Garage, as well as one on computational thinking. And so we're going to basically, in a V1, just do what they do, right? Obviously, they've got a lot more resources than we have to work with. So we're going to, it's going to be relatively linear. At the beginning, you'll see all the modules, you can navigate through them. We'll put them in an order, but we're not going to serve up like tracks that I was referring to before. That would be in the future, but so that's what these modules are, right? So you log in, then you have access to these modules, and if all you do is that's excellent. Certainly that, and this is something you might want to poke around if you're considering a run, and then using the community feature. I won't get into detail that, but this is basically from us looking at the way Google set up their courses. On the other side, in a Q&A forum, because you've got access to the group. On the other side here, we would have a Google site, and actually tomorrow Google's coming out with a new version of Google Sites. Who's tried using Google Sites before? Anybody? So they're like brutal, right? Just brutal. But they're coming with responsive sites tomorrow. So it's a major upgrade of their Google Sites. So if you haven't taken a look at it, I think that's coming. Well, it's coming out tomorrow. So we'll basically have an interface for somebody. This is somebody who's probably gone through a campaign, experienced people like yourselves in the room who are more comfortable with the platform, and you'll access basically the drive through this site. We'll lay it out, and then use Trello for our development pipeline for the resources, about our wish list, let's say. If we have the funds available, what we would do with it. So that's the plan. In the working group tonight, our agenda was posted on the Slack group, and we'll aim to. I'm going to talk to the group about it tonight, whether we can commit to producing something like this every week, but this would be the intention. And our agenda is to do introductions. We've already basically done most of the framing of this discussion, so tonight we just want to set the team norms and structure, basically see what type of group this is going to be, and what the people that are attending tonight, we similar to the way in which Civic Tech works in terms of creating culture, and we'll talk a bit about the team roles. So this is where we'll focus team structure and roles, and if that's all we do tonight, that's great. And then basically the next step, there's researching the tools. We've got some suggestions of where we're headed, but we need to have to do a full round of research on all the various tools and all the various options, so we're comfortable with the way we're proceeding. So that's the project. I've got pretty ambitious goals in terms of 2018. So there were 358 races in Toronto alone, municipally at the council level only in Toronto. There are thousands, tens of thousands of races across the country every cycle. I worked with 17 in the last election. I've kind of said I'm determined to add a 0 to the end of that, at least in the next round. But we'll see. I mean, to some extent, it's going to rely on, full extent, it's going to rely on the people that get involved. So that's my pitch to come join the working group. So thank you very much.
Interested in getting to the breakout groups, probably 2 or 3 questions.
Yeah, so let's do it. Gabe's got one. We've got one up here.
My question is actually to the group. I'm curious to know how many people here have volunteered on a political campaign at some point in the past. Cool. That's a pretty good number.
Awesome.
I was at the Code, short comment. I was at the Code for America Summit last week, which was pretty awesome. And one of the speakers was the mayor of Oakland, California, which is where the conference was. And 5 years ago, she was a city councilor who was kind of an advocate of open data and kind of got connected to Code for America. She's now the mayor. And the thing that she said to the audience was, she acknowledged that in the technology community, there's often a bit of skepticism about politics, but that if we can get over that, we can really go far. And that she made a specific provocation to the audience to consider running, to consider their role as leaders, as tech-savvy leaders of the future. And so I extend that provocation to this group. You may not have thought about running before. You may have not have thought about taking a leadership role in a campaign before, but you should, because that's how shit gets done.
And I just want to... I got to build on that because there was talk about disruption within government and mechanisms for disrupting. And so basically every single politician, so if we want politicians to represent us and to know how to use the technology to actually represent us, we have to train the politicians, right? We have to train the staff. And the staff often work on campaigns. So every politician who gets into office has to go through this. So if we have a point in the system where we can influence change, campaigns are really neat because everybody goes through it. And one thing I've learned a lot of, over a few years is a great place to introduce new technology and new tools is on a campaign because people are wired at that moment to think about doing things differently. So that's also a really good time to tack on kind of new learnings, right? So that is interesting as well. I think that if we think about the number of campaigns, especially municipally without parties involved, as a national incubator for startups, right? So my experience of campaigns is that they're very open to people who have good ideas coming in. They're, of course, low resourced, so they have a low bandwidth or a low threshold for people that come in and don't see things through. However, you can have a senior role very quickly. So if you want experience on a startup, you can basically build an organization over the course of several months, and neat things come from that, neat learnings about how to do this. And so the Mazer campaign, many of you in the room, was one campaign I worked on a lot, and in some ways, The Mazer campaign incubated Groundforce, incubated Civic Tech Toronto, Commonwealth Pensions, Alex's new company, grew out of that. These neat startups grew out of and were forged through this very cool local campaign. So if we think about this as an entrepreneurial exercise as well, it's also really cool in terms of value proposition.
I just had a supplemental to Gabe. I have to name drop that. I was also a co-group mayor. And the mayor of Oakland is extremely cool. You get a chance to check it out. The whole city was actually super great place. So, but I wanted to go back to the why of why this is important. Because I go back to the conversation that we had at an urban digital meetup. And I haven't worked on campaigns, but I have been involved with a couple of people where we've tried to figure out how to run. They're interested in running, both federally or municipally, and the barriers were quite high, and the chance of them winning was so low that they ended up not running. And what I liked about this was that you were providing them a toolkit, sort of a way in. It helps them, sort of a platform to help them get past some of those barriers, and that's really the appeal of this, I think, to talk about with this group and with others.
Yeah, just so that I don't take any credit for this, this is basically like the solution society has, whether you're a church back in the days, through to unions, through to political parties, is basically if you've got a distributed organization, you eventually need to have some central resources to help out, but we've got legal barriers that prevent parties at the municipal level. So there's actually no parties at the municipal level to do this, to serve this purpose, and not saying that we necessarily want parties at the municipal level. This is why we're providing some resources. So it is to say that there is not a mechanism for sharing across campaigns, and that it's basically pretty well established that if you want to help people who haven't run these things before, you have to give them a leg up in terms of some of the technology to do it. Others?
You keep talking about third parties. That's just flat not true in Toronto.
Well, there's party influence, but there are no municipal parties.
It's way more than influence. It's I've been running. I have been working on election campaigns for like 40 years in this town.
Yeah.
I have not seen a successful campaign that has not basically been a political party.
Okay, so there's absolutely influence, but there's not necessarily a political party structure in most cities.
No, they don't formally, but when you come down to the campaign, you walk in and you look around,
right.
It's being run by a political party. And I'm interested in how you see this relating to that.
Oh, well, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that there's 358 candidates to run, and certainly if you've got a backing of a political party, that's one of the ways in which you can actually get in. The challenge is that it's very hard to get access to those to that backing, right? Like, it's to know how to do that. For example, most of the campaigns I worked with did not have the backing of a union or a political party, and it's a huge uphill challenge. You can't get lists. It's hard to make calls about things like spending limits and auditing requirements and all of these kinds of things. There's a lot of work that is basically every campaign has to figure out in the absence of that. So if you have an experienced campaigner working, or if you've got the political party backing, this in some ways is not necessarily designed for you, but if you don't, this is what we're basically serving the rest of the candidates.
How many of those campaigns won?
I hate to be the unlovable.
Yeah, we gotta.
The working groups are the beating heart of this, so we gotta not take too much time from it.
Thanks.
But maybe one more, and just like favoring someone new to the group, relatively new. Is anyone? Cool.
So come on out to the working group if you're interested, and thanks for your time.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks. So quickly, announcement time.